Philozoopia.
What if ancient wisdom held a direct key to unlocking, well, a truly good and happy life today? What if the path to flourishing wasn't some grand mystery, a secret known only to a select few, but actually a practical, well-defined journey that's been laid out for us for, gosh, thousands of years?
Right. We often think of ethics, philosophy maybe, as this really abstract academic thing, something for dusty university halls or obscure texts you barely touch.
Exactly. But Aristotle, writing literally millennia ago, offers a surprisingly hands-on, almost practical guide to living well, a kind of manual for human flourishing that feels incredibly relevant to our lives right now.
And that's precisely what we're going to dive into today. Our focus is a monumental work, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. We're specifically drawing from the insightful translation by W.D. Ross.
And this isn't just some ancient text to admire from afar, is it?
Not at all. It's really a foundational exploration of human purpose. It's a deep dive into how we cultivate virtue within ourselves, the nuanced principles of justice that bind our communities.
And even the indispensable role that friendship plays in a truly flourishing existence. He talks a lot about friendship.
He really does. It's central.
So our mission in this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to extract the most practical, the most profound, and maybe even some surprising insights from Aristotle's work. We want to show you, our listener, how his timeless ideas aren't just, historical curiosities, but actually incredibly relevant tools for your own personal growth.
Tools for making better choices, maybe, and for understanding how you interact with the world around you.
Yeah. We'll explore his rather surprising definitions of happiness, how we actively cultivate virtue, that active part is key.
And the absolutely essential role of friendship and why understanding pleasure is, perhaps counterintuitively, a key to a good life.
So prepare to unpack some ancient wisdom with some very, very modern applications.
Okay, so let's begin this journey, starting with perhaps the biggest, most fundamental question Aristotle poses right at the very outset. What is the ultimate aim of human action?
Where's it all going?
Exactly. Yeah. Aristotle wastes no time in asserting that everything we do, every conscious choice we make, every project we undertake, aims at some good.
Right. Think about it. You study to gain knowledge, you work to earn money, you exercise to be healthy. Each of these actions has a purpose, a good it aims for.
Sure. But if we follow that chain of purposes, where does it end? If we desire one thing for the sake of another and that for the sake of yet another.
It just keeps going.
Right. Aristotle says our striving becomes empty and vain. It's like an endless tunnel with no light at the end. So there must be a final end, a chief good, that we desire purely for its own sake.
Not as a means to something else.
Precisely. This chief good is what he calls eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia, that's the key term, isn't it? Sounds a bit grand.
It is, and it's crucial. It's often translated as happiness or maybe flourishing, but it's so much more than just a fleeting feeling of joy or, momentary pleasure.
So it's not just feeling good.
Not just feeling good. It's a profound, deep-seated state of human well-being. A life well lived where you're truly fulfilling your potential and living virtuously. It's less about feeling good in the moment and much more about doing good and being good throughout your entire life.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Aristotle insists that without this clear target, this chief good, we'd be like archers who have no mark to aim at, just shooting arrows aimlessly into the air.
Right, you wouldn't know where you're trying to hit.
Exactly. The knowledge of this ultimate purpose, this eudaimonia, he says it has great influence on life. It provides a foundational framework, a sort of compass for every subsequent choice and goal you set. It gives coherence to your efforts.
That's a really powerful thought. So what does this all mean for how you, the listener, plan your life and define success? Are your goals just a series of stepping stones leading to more stepping stones? Or are they ultimately pointing towards a true north, a chief good that genuinely guides your efforts?
It's a question that can provide incredible clarity, because if we don't know what the ultimate good is, how can we truly know if we're hitting it or if we're just, running in place?
Yeah, just spinning our wheels.
And here's where it gets truly interesting, maybe even a bit controversial for us today, because Aristotle then connects this chief good, this ultimate happiness, directly to the political realm.
Politics, how does that fit in?
Well, he argues that the knowledge of this chief good belongs to the most authoritative art, which he identifies as politics.
Okay, that might sound counterintuitive to many of us now. We often think of personal happiness as, well, personal. A private pursuit, separate from the big picture of politics.
Totally. But we need to remember he's not talking about politics as we might understand it today, with electoral campaigns and partisan debates necessarily. He's talking about politics in its original, much broader sense. The art and science of governing a city-state, of ordering a community for the good of its citizens.
Ah, okay, so the science of how a society should run for everyone's benefit.
Exactly. He sees it as the master art because it ordains what other sciences are studied in a state, what citizens learn, and to what extent. It encompasses strategy, economics, rhetoric. All these disciplines, he argues, fall under the purview of politics.
Okay, I see the connection now. It sets the stage for everything else.
And crucially, he states that since politics legislates as to what we are to do and what we are to abstain from, its end, its ultimate purpose must include those of the others. Meaning the goals of all other human activities, whether it's medicine aiming for health, or economics aiming for wealth, or even individual ethics aiming for virtue, they ultimately serve the larger purpose defined by politics.
Wow. So this end must be the good for man.
Yeah.
The ultimate good for humans is achieved within this larger political or maybe communal context.
That's exactly his point. For Aristotle, the highest form of human good isn't achieved in isolation. It's achieved within a well-ordered community.
Which means that if the good for a single individual is worthwhile, attaining it for an entire state or a collective of city-states is greater and more complete, even finer and more godlike.
It really elevates the role of the community, doesn't it? It suggests that our individual quest for happiness is most fully realized and truly meaningful when it's part of a collective striving for the same ultimate good.
So our individual flourishing is intrinsically linked to the well-being of our community. That's a powerful idea.
Absolutely. And think about the implications today. If the pursuit of the highest good for an individual is intrinsically linked to the political community, how does that shape our understanding of, say, civic duty or societal well-being?
It changes things. It elevates the role of the state, maybe not just as an administrator of laws, but as a primary architect of collective human flourishing.
Right. It suggests that active participation in civic life, in shaping the laws and norms of our community, isn't just some responsibility, but a fundamental part of our own journey towards eudaimonia.
Okay, so if we're all looking for this ultimate happiness, this eudaimonia, how exactly do we find it? Where do people usually look?
Well, Aristotle tackles this head-on by looking at how most people, most of us really, actually define happiness in our daily lives. And he examines three prominent types of life that people commonly pursue. And he doesn't shy away from critiquing them pretty sharply.
Okay, lay it on us. What are the common mistakes?
Yes, he offers a rather blunt assessment. First, there's what he calls the life of enjoyment. This is where most men, and men of the most vulgar type, identify happiness purely with pleasure.
Chasing the next thrill, the next indulgence.
Exactly. But Aristotle is quite dismissive. He calls it a slavish life, one suitable only for beasts.
Ouch, why so harsh?
His reasoning is important.
Yeah.
This kind of pleasure is fleeting. It depends entirely on external stimuli, and it offers no inherent goodness or lasting fulfillment because it's not tied to the cultivation of character. It doesn't come from within.
So if you're constantly chasing the next hit of dopamine, maybe, the next quick pleasure, whether it's through endless entertainment, overconsumption, or even, I don't know, the immediate gratification of social media likes.
Right. Aristotle would argue you're leading a life that's not truly human flourishing. It's a lower, less developed form of existence because it makes you dependent on things outside yourself rather than building strength and virtue within.
It's a treadmill, not a path to enduring contentment. Got it. What's next?
Precisely. Then there's the second type, the political life. This is where people of superior refinement, those with maybe more noble aspirations, equate happiness with honor.
Ah, recognition, respect from others. That seems better.
It does seem better, and it's the typical end of the political life, the reward for public service or achievement. However, Aristotle calls honor too superficial.
Too superficial. Why?
And here's a truly insightful takeaway. Honor depends entirely on those who bestow it, not on the recipient. You can be honored by bad people for bad reasons, or by good people for good reasons. It's an external validation, easily given or taken away.
That makes sense. It's not really about you.
Exactly. He notes that men often seek honor to be assured of their goodness, often seeking it from men of practical wisdom and from those who honor them for their virtue.
Ah, so they want honor because they are virtuous.
Right, which, he points out, implies that virtue itself is actually better, more fundamental than the honor it might bring.
That's a critical distinction. If you're seeking honor for your virtue, then the virtue itself must be the higher good, the true source of worth. It's the intrinsic quality, not the external recognition, that matters most.
Precisely. But then he takes it another step further. He says that merely possessing virtue isn't enough either.
Wait, how can virtue not be enough?
Well, you could possess virtue, be a person of great potential and good character, but be asleep or with lifelong inactivity. Just sitting there, being virtuous but doing nothing.
Okay, yeah, that's clearly not happiness. Happiness requires action, a dynamic engagement with the world.
Which brings us directly to Aristotle's own profound definition of happiness. It's not a mere feeling, not a passive possession, and certainly not a state of inactivity. Happiness, or eudaimonia, is an activity of soul in accordance with complete virtue, sustained in a complete life.
Activity of the soul in accordance with complete virtue. That's dense.
It is. And he doesn't hold back in describing its grandeur. He calls it the best, noblest, and most pleasant thing in the world.
Okay, so this is where it really gets to the core of what he's saying. Happiness isn't just something you feel or something you get from outside. It's an active pursuit of excellence, something you do.
Exactly. And here's the surprising twist regarding pleasure. It isn't the end itself, but it naturally accompanies virtuous activity, like a charm that enhances the experience.
So pleasure isn't the goal, but a happy byproduct of doing good things.
Kind of, yeah. He famously says, "The man who does not rejoice in noble actions is not even good."
Wow. That powerfully challenges the common modern idea that virtue is grim or self-sacrificing or, devoid of enjoyment.
It absolutely does. For Aristotle, true pleasure is inextricably linked to living virtuously. It suggests that true, lasting pleasure is intrinsically linked to living out your highest potential, to performing noble actions, to engaging fully with your capacities.
And it's not something granted by chance or, divine favor?
No. It must be something shared and attainable by study and care. Through deliberate effort and cultivation, this reinforces the idea of happiness as something within our reach through conscious, disciplined endeavor.
Okay, even with this active pursuit, this deep dive into character and action, Aristotle acknowledges the undeniable role of luck, right? Chance and external goods.
He does. He's remarkably realistic about this. He says that while happiness is fundamentally virtuous activity, external misfortunes can indeed crush and maim happiness.
So life can still throw curveballs that mess things up, even for the virtuous person.
Definitely. He clarifies that while small pieces of good fortune or its opposite clearly do not weigh down the scales of life or fundamentally alter one's state of eudaimonia, a multitude of great events, if they turn out well, will make life happier. But if they turn out ill, they crush and maim happiness. These significant external blows, deep personal losses, devastating financial ruin, serious illness, they bring profound pain and hinder many activities, making it genuinely difficult to maintain a state of flourishing.
That's quite sobering, but does he offer any consolation?
He does. He notes that even in the face of truly great misfortune, nobility shines through when a man bears with resignation many great misfortunes, not through insensibility to pain, but through nobility and greatness of soul.
That's incredibly profound. It's not about being immune to suffering or pain, but about how you react to it, the character you display amidst adversity. It's a testament to the resilience of a virtuous soul.
Absolutely. It's also important to remember that even the happiest person needs the goods of the body and external goods to avoid impediment to their activities. Things like health, basic sustenance, safety, and even some material comfort.
The basics, you need those to function.
Right. These are the necessary conditions that allow virtuous activity to occur. However, he also wisely warns that excessive good fortune, too much wealth or power without the corresponding virtue, can also be an impediment to true flourishing. It can corrupt you.
Okay, so this raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider. How much control do we truly have over our happiness given the undeniable role of external circumstances?
It's a delicate balance Aristotle carefully considers, a recognition of life's messy realities.
Okay. So if happiness is an activity of the soul in accordance with complete virtue, then the next logical step in this deep dive is to understand virtue itself. What is virtue, according to Aristotle?
And Aristotle makes a crucial point right off the bat, one that's incredibly practical and immediately applicable. He says, we're inquiring not in order to know what virtue is, but in order to become good.
Ah, so it's not just about knowing, it's about becoming.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this foundational insight. This is perhaps one of the most practical and often overlooked lessons from the ethics. It's not enough to intellectually grasp ethical principles, to read books about virtue, or to discuss morality in abstract terms.
Just knowing the theory isn't enough.
Not at all. Theory alone, he says, is like a patient who listens attentively to a doctor's diagnosis and advice, but then completely fails to follow any of the prescribed orders.
It won't get better.
Right. Just as such a patient won't be made well in body, the theoretician who merely understands virtue but doesn't act on it won't be made well in soul.
It's all about doing.
It is. He asserts that moral virtues are states of character, produced by activities exercised on particular objects. We become just by doing just acts, tempered by repeatedly doing tempered acts, and brave by consistently doing brave acts.
So it's like building a muscle. Practice makes perfect, or at least practice makes virtuous.
That's a great analogy. This is a crucial distinction that flies in the face of ideas that virtue is simply an innate capacity, a gift you're born with, or maybe just a feeling you experience. Virtue, for Aristotle, is a developed habit, a cultivated disposition.
It's not automatic.
No. He says we have the faculties by nature, meaning we have the potential for virtue, but we are not made good or bad by nature. We're made good or bad by our choices and repeated actions.
So how does this resonate with your own efforts, listener, to build good habits, whether it's daily exercise, mindful eating, or trying to improve your character, maybe be more patient or generous? It's a powerful reminder that character isn't given. It's meticulously built brick by brick through consistent, intentional repetition.
And this leads directly to his most famous and sometimes misunderstood ethical concept, the doctrine of the mean, or mesos.
The golden mean? I've heard of that. The middle way.
Sort of, but it's more nuanced than just the middle. Every virtue, he argues, is a state of character concerned with choice, lying in a mean, i.e. the mean relative to us, this being determined by a rational principle.
Okay, break that down. A mean relative to us, determined by reason.
Right. This mean is always a balance point between two opposing vices, one of excess and one of defect. Too much or too little.
Okay, so it's not just a simplistic do-good. It's do good in the right way, at the right time, with the right person, to the right extent, from the right motive. That sounds complicated.
It is complicated.
Yeah.
He uses a very relatable analogy from health and physical training. Just as too much or too little exercise or food destroys physical health and strength, the proportionate amount produces, increases, and preserves it.
Right amount for the right person.
Exactly. The same principle, he argues, applies to virtues.
Can you give some specific examples?
Sure. Let's consider a few to make this concrete. Take courage, for instance. It's the mean regarding feelings of fear and confidence.
Okay, fear and confidence.
The person who fears nothing at all and recklessly rushes into every danger becomes rash. That's the vice of excess.
Too hoardy.
Right. The person who fears everything and doesn't stand their ground against anything becomes a coward. That's the vice of defect. Courage is the golden mean between these two extremes.
Got it. Rashness, courage, cowardice.
Exactly. Or think about temperance, which is the mean regarding bodily pleasures. Excess here is self-indulgence, while deficiency is insensibility, though Aristotle notes that this extreme, being insensible to pleasure, is pretty rare.
So gluttony, temperance, maybe something like asceticism, but he thinks that's uncommon.
Something like that, yeah. For another example, consider liberality, which concerns giving and taking money. The excess is prodigality, someone who spends too much, perhaps indiscriminately. The deficiency is meanness or stinginess, someone who holds on to their money too tightly.
Okay. Wastefulness, liberality, stinginess.
Perfect. The liberal man finds the mean, spending according to his substance and on the right objects.
What's truly insightful here is that finding this mean is no easy task to be good. He admits it's difficult.
Very difficult. It's not a simple mathematical average. He gives the example of food for an athlete. If 10 pounds is too much and 2 is too little, 6 isn't necessarily the right amount for everyone.
Right, depends on the person.
Like Milo, the wrestler needs way more than a beginner. The mean is relative to us, meaning it's highly individualized. It requires practical wisdom, phronesis, and a keen perception of particular facts and circumstances.
So you need good judgment. It's not just following a rule book.
Absolutely not. It demands judgment, perception, and he offers the memorable bent stick analogy.
Oh yeah, what's that?
To hit the mean, one must sometimes depart from what is more contrary to it, like straightening a bent stick by bending it far in the opposite direction.
Ah, so if you tend towards one extreme, say cowardice, you might need to aim for being a bit rash sometimes just to land back in the middle in courage.
That's the idea. You have to know your own tendencies and compensate. Plus, he warns us, we must guard against pleasure, as we often do not judge it impartially, and it can easily sway us away from the mean. Pleasure pulls us off course.
That makes sense. Pleasure is very persuasive.
And he's also clear that not every action or feeling admits of a mean. Some things are just plain bad.
Ah, okay. So it's not always about finding a middle ground.
No. Some actions are inherently bad, intrinsically vicious, regardless of degree. He lists examples like spite, shamelessness, envy, or actions such as adultery, theft, murder.
There's no virtuous amount of murder.
Exactly. There's no right way to commit adultery. It's always wrong. These are not excesses or deficiencies of a virtue. They're simply vices themselves. This sets clear, absolute boundaries for what actions can ever be considered virtuous.
Okay, that's an important clarification. This concept of the mean also ties into a crucial ethical distinction Aristotle makes, that between voluntary and involuntary actions, right?
Yes, absolutely. Understanding this distinction is fundamental to assigning praise or blame, and ultimately to building character.
So what makes an action voluntary?
An act is considered voluntary if the moving principle is in the agent himself, he being aware of the particular circumstances of the action.
Right.
Basically, you initiated it, and you knew what you were doing.
And involuntary.
Involuntary acts are due to compulsion, meaning an external cause where the agent contributes absolutely nothing, like being pushed by the wind, or ignorance that causes genuine pain and repentance once the truth is known. You didn't know a key fact, and you regret it later.
Okay, seems clear enough. Compulsion or ignorance.
But he provides a nuanced view of what he calls mixed actions, those done from fear of greater evils.
Mixed actions, like what?
For example, a ship captain throwing goods overboard in a storm to save the ship and lives. In the abstract, no one voluntarily throws their goods away, right?
No, of course not.
But at that moment, faced with a dire choice, any sensible person would. Aristotle argues such actions are more like voluntary actions, because they are chosen at the moment, even if one wouldn't choose them otherwise. The agent still chooses to act, even under duress.
Okay, so even under pressure, if you make the choice, it's leaning towards voluntary.
That's his view. And crucially, acts done from anger or appetite are not involuntary.
Really? Even if you lose your temper?
Yep, they are the man's actions, even if you're rational, because the moving principle is still within the agent. You might act rashly out of anger, but that anger originated within you, and thus you are responsible for the action.
Oof. So no excuses for acting out of passion.
Not according to Aristotle. We are still accountable for actions primarily driven by passion, even if we weren't thinking rationally in the moment.
Okay. And choice, prohairesis, is key here, isn't it?
Absolutely key. Choice is a deliberate desire, which Aristotle emphasizes is what distinguishes humans from irrational creatures. Animals might act on instinct or appetite, but humans can deliberate and choose their actions.
Deliberate desire. So thinking it through and then wanting it.
Right. The incontinent man, for example, acts with appetite, but not choice. He knows what's right, but gives in to impulse. He doesn't choose the bad action deliberately.
He's overcome by desire.
Exactly. The continent man, however, acts with choice, but struggles against his appetite. He chooses the right thing, despite temptation.
He makes the choice, even though it's hard.
Right. And choice, for Aristotle, is about selecting the means to an end, not the end itself. A doctor chooses how to heal a patient, not whether to heal. The end, health, is a given. The choice lies in the path.
So all this implies we have a profound responsibility for our character.
Immense responsibility. If a man, without being ignorant, does the things which will make him unjust, he will be unjust voluntarily.
That is powerful. If you know what you're doing and you choose to do something that makes you a worse person, you are voluntarily becoming unjust.
Exactly. And while it's hard to change a formed character, much like an illness contracted voluntarily, which is harder to cure once it takes hold, the initial choice to engage in activities that shape your character lies with the individual.
So this raises an important question for you, the listener. How much do you attribute your actions to external forces versus your own inner choice? And how does understanding the difference empower you to actively shape your character and become the person you aspire to be?
It's a fundamental aspect of self-mastery, really.
Okay, moving on from the broad strokes of virtue and the mean, let's get into the specifics. Starting with courage. This is a big one for Aristotle, right?
It is, and he dissects it with remarkable precision, separating true courage from its many imposters. It's not just about fearlessness,
Hmm.
it's about how and why you face fear.
So how does he define true courage?
He defines courage as a mean with regard to feelings of fear and confidence, and is primarily concerned with the greatest terrible things, especially facing noble death in battle.
Noble death, so dying for a good cause.
Essentially, yes. The truly brave man faces death because it is noble to do so or because it is base not to do so. It's about the intention, the noble aim, and a choice made for the sake of honor and what is good, not simply a lack of fear.
Okay. The motive matters hugely.
Hugely. And this is where it gets truly fascinating, because he then identifies 5 distinct false kinds of courage actions that might look brave on the surface, but lack the true virtue.
Ah, the imposters. Let's hear them.
Okay, first there's compelled courage. This is where soldiers act out of shame or fear of punishment, not for a noble end.
Like being forced into battle.
Right. Think of ancient armies with officers behind the lines, maybe, or even modern situations where individuals are forced into dangerous situations by circumstance or threat. They might stand their ground, but their motivation is external coercion, not an internal commitment to nobility.
So it's not real bravery because the reason is fear of something else, not choosing the good.
Exactly. Second, there's experienced courage. This is what Aristotle notes Socrates mistakenly thought was true courage, equating it purely with knowledge or skill.
Like professional soldier.
Precisely. They might seem brave because they know how to handle empty alarms and are skilled in combat tactics. They understand the mechanics of fighting.
Mm-hmm.
But Aristotle points out they often flee when outmatched, when they realize the odds are truly stacked against them, fearing death more than disgrace. This is unlike the truly brave citizen soldiers who might die at their posts because flight is disgraceful and their duty is paramount.
So their courage is more about competence and calculation, not necessarily character.
That's the idea. Competence, not necessarily courage, is a virtue. Third is courage from passion, or what he calls spirit, thumos.
Acting out of anger.
Yes, like wild beasts attacking from pain or anger, or people acting out of sheer emotional fury. While passion can certainly aid brave men, providing a surge of energy.
An adrenaline rush.
Right. But acting only from passion, without deliberate choice and a motive for honor, makes one pugnacious, but not genuinely brave. The beast attacks out of instinct, not noble intent. Similarly, a person consumed by rage might fight recklessly, but it's not the reasoned, chosen courage Aristotle values.
Okay, what's number 4?
Fourth is sanguine courage. This is where people are overconfident due to past successes. They genuinely believe they are stronger or luckier than they are, perhaps having survived many skirmishes.
They think they're invincible.
Sort of. They are confident because they think they're strongest. Aristotle observes that they tend to run away when their initial adventures fail, or when they encounter a genuinely superior force.
So their confidence is brittle.
Exactly. True brave men, he notes, are keen in the moment of action, but quiet beforehand. It's a grounded, realistic confidence, not a reckless or deluded one built on past victories.
And the last one, the 5th imposter.
Finally, there's ignorant courage. People who are simply ignorant of the danger they face might appear brave, but they lack self-reliance and flee immediately when they realize the true facts and gravity of the situation.
So they just didn't know it was dangerous.
Pretty much. This is distinct from sanguine courage in that there's no prior false confidence, merely a fundamental lack of awareness that dissolves upon realizing the truth. For instance, someone might walk into a dangerous situation simply because they don't understand the risks, not because they are genuinely brave.
Wow. That's a really thorough breakdown of things that look like courage but aren't.
It is. And what's truly insightful here is that Aristotle highlights that courage, genuine courage, often involves pain. It is harder to face what is painful than to simply abstain from what is pleasant.
That's a really interesting point. Facing pain is harder than resisting pleasure?
He thinks so. The end of courage, noble action, is indeed noble and therefore pleasant in a higher sense. But the blows they take are distressing. He makes a profound point. The more virtuous and happy a man is, the more he has to lose.
So the more painful the thought of death becomes.
Right. Yet he is all the more brave for choosing noble deeds despite the immense personal cost.
This framework provides an incredible lens through which to distinguish genuine virtue from mere appearances, doesn't it? In your own life or when evaluating public figures.
Absolutely. It's not about how something looks on the surface, but the underlying motivation, the deliberate choice, and the strength of character behind the action.
Okay, so from courage, let's turn to temperance. Another key virtue, right? But also about finding a mean.
Yes, exactly. Temperance is another virtue of the irrational parts of the soul, much like courage. Temperance is a mean regarding bodily pleasures. It's less concerned with pain, primarily dealing with desires.
And the excess is self-indulgence.
Right. And its defect is insensibility, being unmoved by pleasure, which, as we mentioned, Aristotle thought was pretty rare.
So what exactly is temperance not about? Which pleasures doesn't it cover?
Good question. It's not about pleasures of the soul, like the joy of honor or the delight of learning. You're not called self-indulgent for loving to learn too much, or for aspiring to great things.
Okay. And it's not even about all bodily pleasures equally.
No, not pleasures like vision, hearing, or smell, unless, maybe, those smells specifically remind you of appetite, like the enticing aroma of a gourmet meal to a self-indulgent person, which then leads to excessive desire for the food itself.
Okay. So what is it primarily about?
It is primarily about the pleasures of touch and taste, especially those related directly to food, drink, and sex.
The most basic animalistic pleasures.
Pretty much, yeah. These are the pleasures we share most immediately with animals, and therefore it's where our rational nature must truly assert its control.
So what does the temperate man look like? How does he behave?
The temperate man, Aristotle explains, does not enjoy what the self-indulgent man enjoys most, or at least not excessively. He desires pleasant things that make for health or for good condition, moderately and as he should.
So enjoying good food, but not gorging himself.
Exactly. Choosing them in the right measure, at the right time. He ensures these desires are not hindrances to noble ends or beyond his means. His desires serve his rational goals.
And there's a fascinating connection Aristotle draws to childhood here, isn't there?
Yes, he likens self-indulgence to childish faults, because children, before reason fully develops, live at the beck and call of appetite. They want what they want immediately, without restraint.
Makes sense. Kids aren't known for moderation.
Right, so Aristotle argues that the appetitive element of our soul, those desires and impulses, should be obedient and chastened, and ultimately harmonize with the rational principle.
So it isn't about crushing desires entirely.
No, not crushing them, but bringing them into alignment with reason for a well-ordered, flourishing life. So for you, the listener, how do you find this mean in your own daily habits and desires?
It's about bringing your impulses under the disciplined, wise guidance of your rational self, ensuring they serve your larger purpose rather than rule you, a constant balancing act.
A constant balancing act, indeed. From these individual virtues, Aristotle logically expands his framework to the community, delving into the profoundly important concept of justice.
Which he considers complete virtue, right? That sounds huge.
It is huge. He argues that justice, unlike other virtues, isn't just about an internal state. It's always, by its very nature, social. It's about how we treat others.
How so?
He argues that justice is complete virtue, but not absolutely, but in relation to our neighbor. What he means is that while other virtues perfect the individual, justice perfects the individual in their interaction with others.
So it's virtue put into practice socially.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's the actual exercise of complete virtue towards others. He famously states, "In justice is every virtue comprehended." Not because justice contains all virtues in itself, but because it's the virtue that encompasses all the others when they are applied in relation to other people.
Like being bravely just or temperately just.
Sort of, yes. It's another's good, meaning it's about doing what is advantageous or fair to another person. The best man, he says, is he who exercises his virtue towards another.
This implies that true virtue isn't just about personal purity or self-improvement. It's about how you act, how you live, how you contribute in society. That's quite a focus on the communal.
It is. And that he distinguishes between two crucial kinds of particular justice, moving beyond the general sense of just being lawful.
Okay, what are the two kinds?
First, there's distributive justice. This concerns the distribution of honor or money or other things that fall to be divided among those who have a share in the Constitution. Things the community hand out.
Like resources, recognition.
Exactly. And it's based on merit, though he acknowledges that different societies define merit differently. Democracies value free men equally, oligarchies value wealth, and aristocracies value excellence or virtue.
So the standard of merit can change, but the principle is distribution according to merit.
Yes. The core idea is that equals should receive equal shares and unequals, unequal shares, proportionate to their merit.
And this is based on what he calls a geometrical proportion. Sounds mathematical.
It is. The ratio between persons must be the same as the ratio between the things distributed. So if person A is twice as meritorious, by whatever standard, as person B, they should receive twice the share of the goods or honors being distributed.
And if that proportion is violated?
That's when quarrels and complaints arise in a society. If equals get unequal shares or unequals get equal shares. It's all about proportionality, about ensuring fairness in how resources, honors, and responsibilities are allocated based on a society's chosen criteria of worth.
Okay, that's distributive justice. What's the second type?
The second is rectificatory or corrective justice. This applies to transactions both voluntary and involuntary between individuals.
Transactions, like buying and selling.
Yes, buying, selling, loaning, but also involuntary things like theft, assault, adultery, poisoning, basically, situations where one person is wronged another.
Okay. How does this differ from distributive justice?
Unlike distributive justice, which considers the status or merit of the parties, this form of justice is based on arithmetical proportion. The law, in this context, treats parties as equal in the eyes of the law, regardless of their individual merit or social standing outside of the specific transaction or harm.
So it doesn't matter if one person is rich and the other poor, or one noble and the other common.
Not for corrective justice. The judge, in this instance, tries to equalize by means of the penalty, taking away from the gain of the assailant and making good the loss of the victim. The just outcome here is the intermediate between loss and gain, restoring balance. It aims to put things back as they were before the wrong occurred.
Trying to make the victim whole again.
Exactly. And he even brings in money as a critical common measure for reciprocal justice in exchange.
Money helps make things fair. How?
Money serves to equate dissimilar goods. How many pairs of shoes are worth one house, for example? It represents demand, acting as a medium that holds things together in a transactional society.
So it allows us to compare apples and oranges, economically speaking.
Precisely. It exists not by nature but by law. A convention, a human invention, that allows for fair and balanced exchange where direct bartering would be impractical or impossible. It's a tool for ensuring fairness in exchanges.
What's truly fascinating here is how Aristotle distinguishes these different types of fairness. When you, listener, feel something is unjust in the modern world, whether it's about income inequality, a legal dispute, or even a perceived slight among friends, which of these types of justice are you instinctively appealing to?
Yeah, distributive or corrective. This framework helps clarify many modern disputes, allowing us to pinpoint the specific kind of fairness being invoked, and thus, often the root of the disagreement.
He also talks about political justice, doesn't he? Where does that fit?
Yes, political justice, he says, exists only among men who share their life with a view to self-sufficiency, men who are free and either proportionally or arithmetically equal. It's justice within a functioning political community among equals.
Governed by law.
Exactly. It's governed by law, which exists precisely where there is the potential for injustice, to prevent individuals from taking too much for themselves. Magistrates are then understood as guardians of justice, and thus of equality also, ensuring the proper application of these principles.
Okay, but laws aren't always perfect, are they? Sometimes applying the letter of the law seems unfair.
Aristotle recognized this absolutely.
Yeah.
Building on that, he introduces equity as a correction of legal justice.
Equity corrects the law.
In specific cases, yes. Law, by its very nature, is universal. It's designed to apply to the general case. But sometimes a universal statement is not possible to apply perfectly to particular unusual cases, leading to an unfair outcome if you just follow the rule rigidly.
So equity steps in.
Right. The equitable provides the right discrimination, allowing for a just outcome in specific circumstances where strict adherence to the law would be unjust. It looks to the spirit of the law, the legislator's intent, rather than just the words.
So while both legal justice and equity are good, the equitable is superior in specific situations because it addresses the inherent limitations of universal law.
Exactly. It ensures true fairness and the spirit of justice are served, rather than just the letter of the law. It's about tailoring justice to the unique contours of a situation, making sure the outcome is truly fair.
That's a really important concept. And he makes another interesting distinction, doesn't he, between acting unjustly and actually being unjust.
Yes, a very powerful distinction. A man acts unjustly if he does an unjust act voluntarily, with knowledge of the circumstances. But he is only unjust as a state of character, as a fundamental disposition.
Like that's who he is.
Right. If he does it by choice, that is, deliberately and consistently, and the act fundamentally violates proportion or equality. One can steal, for example, without necessarily being a thief as a deep-seated character trait.
Maybe out of desperation or passion?
Exactly. Perhaps due to momentary passion, extreme duress, or a one-time lapse in judgment. It was an unjust act, but doesn't automatically make the person inherently unjust in their core character.
Okay, this raises another profound question he tackles. Can a man be voluntarily treated unjustly? Can you choose to be wronged?
His answer is no. While one can voluntarily suffer something unjust, for example, someone might, like the mythical Zalakis Aristotle mentions, choose to foolishly exchange his valuable golden armor for cheap bronze armor, thereby suffering an unfavorable outcome.
He made a bad deal, suffered a loss.
Right. But no one genuinely wishes to be treated unjustly. That's because, Aristotle reasons, no one wishes for what he does not think to be good. Being treated unjustly is, by its very nature, bad, and no one willingly embraces what they perceive as bad for themselves. The desire is always for what appears good.
Okay, so you can agree to something that results in you being treated unjustly, but you don't desire the injustice itself.
That's the gist of it. And somewhat counterintuitively, perhaps, for modern sensibilities, Aristotle clearly states that acting unjustly is the worse, for it involves vice and is blameworthy.
Acting unjustly is worse than being treated unjustly.
Yes. Being unjustly treated, on the other hand, does not involve vice and injustice in oneself. The person who commits the unjust act is the one whose character is corrupted, who is responsible for the moral failing. The victim, though they suffer, does not become unjust by being wronged.
That distinction fundamentally shifts our focus, doesn't it? From isolated acts to the underlying character, intention, and state of soul. When you see someone behaving badly, listener, are they just acting unjustly in that moment, or are they an unjust person? Aristotle wants us to focus on the deeper character-shaping choice and the enduring state of character.
It's a crucial shift in perspective.
We've talked about individual virtue and the intricate workings of justice within the community, but for Aristotle, there's another absolutely indispensable element for a truly flourishing life: friendship.
Yes. Friendship, or philia, is huge for Aristotle. He views it not as a mere luxury, but as something most necessary with a view to living.
Most necessary. More than other things.
He seems to think so. He declares unequivocally, without friends, no one would choose to live, even if they possessed all other goods. Imagine having everything else but no friends? He thinks that's unbearable.
That's a strong statement.
It is. He sees it as vital across all stages of life. Friends help the young avoid error, they aid the old in their needs, and they stimulate noble actions in prime life. We do noble things together with friends.
And what's truly fascinating here is how Aristotle elevates friendship sometimes even above justice. How does that work?
Well, he notes that friendship holds states together, and lawgivers often care more for it than for justice. He even says, when men are friends, they have no need of justice, while when they are merely just, they need friendship as well.
Wow. So friendship is a deeper bond. If you have friendship, justice kind of takes care of itself.
That's the implication. A community bound by friendship doesn't necessarily need external rules to ensure fairness as much. It acts out of shared goodwill and mutual care. It's a superior state.
So friendship isn't just a nice to have. It's a foundational pillar of human existence and societal cohesion, creating a deeper, more harmonious society. But surely not all friendships are the same.
Absolutely not. Recognizing the variety of human connections, he identifies 3 distinct kinds of friendship, each based on the primary object of love or affection between the individuals.
Okay, what are the 3 types?
Yes. First, there's friendship for utility. These are friends for what they get from each other, a reciprocal benefit.
Like work colleagues or networking contacts?
Could be, yeah. Business partners or acquaintances who share a common convenient purpose. Such friendships are easily dissolved if the utility ceases, because the bond isn't based on the other person themselves, but on the advantage gained.
Makes sense. When the benefit disappears, the friendship might too.
Right. He says they are common among older people who might prioritize the useful, or those purely pursuing advantage. Crucially, he observes they don't necessarily live much together, as their bond is functional, not necessarily personal.
Okay. Utility friends. What's the second type?
Second, there's friendship for pleasure. Here, friends enjoy each other's company, delighting in shared activities or simply the pleasantness of being together.
Like your buddies you go out with or share a hobby with.
Exactly. They quickly become friends and quickly cease to be so as pleasures change, as interests shift, or as circumstances evolve. This type of friendship is common among the young and amorous people, who are often driven by passion and immediate gratification.
So these can be intense, but maybe not long-lasting.
Often, yes. But he does note they do wish to spend time together, unlike utility friends sometimes, but their bond is as fleeting as the pleasures they share.
Okay. Utility, pleasure. What's the third and presumably best kind?
And then the pinnacle, the perfect friendship, which is the friendship of men who are good and alike in virtue.
Friendship based on virtue.
Yes. They wish well for their sake and not incidentally, meaning they appreciate and love the other person for who they are, for their inherent goodness and character, not primarily for what they can get from them or the pleasure they provide.
So it's about loving the person themselves.
Exactly. This is the most permanent and enduring kind, because goodness and virtue are enduring qualities, unlike transient utility or shifting pleasures. It is proof against slander, meaning it's robust enough to withstand external attempts to break it because it's built on deep mutual respect and trust.
And in this perfect friendship, Aristotle believes all good qualities converge.
Yes, these friends are good without qualification. They're incidentally useful to each other because good people help each other. And they are naturally pleasant to each other because virtuous activity and companionship with good people is inherently pleasant.
But he says this kind is rare.
Very rare, he notes, and requires time and familiarity. As the proverb says, men cannot know each other till they've eaten salt together.
Eaten salt together, meaning spent significant time, shared meals, shared life.
That's the idea. It emphasizes that perfect friendship isn't instant. It's meticulously built on shared experiences, mutual appreciation of character, and profound trust that develops over time.
What's truly fascinating here is how clearly Aristotle categorizes your relationships. It provides a powerful lens, doesn't it, for you, the listener, to evaluate the depth and longevity of your own connections.
Absolutely. When you think about your own friendships, which of them truly exemplify the perfect kind, where you love the other for their character, and which are perhaps more about fleeting utility or passing pleasure? This framework can help you understand the dynamics of your social world.
Within these relationships, Aristotle also discusses several related concepts: goodwill, unanimity, and a really interesting take on self-love. What's goodwill?
Goodwill, for instance, is presented as merely a beginning of friendship, like the initial pleasure one might get from admiring someone's appearance before deeper affection develops.
So it's like wishing someone well from afar.
Pretty much. It's simply wishing well for someone without the intimacy, desire for their company, or shared life that true friendship entails. It's like an inactive friendship, like a potential starting point.
Okay. And unanimity. He calls that political friendship.
Yes, unanimity, or homonoia, is what he calls political friendship. It's where citizens have the same opinion about what is to their interest and choose the same actions.
So agreeing on the big picture for the community.
Exactly. It's not about agreeing on everything, but having a shared vision for the common good and agreeing on the fundamental means to achieve it. This kind of unanimity is found among good men because they prioritize the common interest.
And bad men can't achieve it.
Not truly, he argues, because they're often driven by self-interest, seeking excessive advantages for themselves, which inevitably leads to discord and conflict.
That makes sense. And he offers a truly fascinating take on why benefactors love those they help, more than the other way around.
Yes. Benefactors, he observes, often love those they've benefited more than beneficiaries love their benefactors. His explanation is quite poetic.
Why is that?
Because, he explains, the handiwork is, in a sense, the producer in activity. He loves his handiwork, therefore, because he loves existence.
Wow. So it's like a creator's love for their creation. They see themselves in the good they've done.
That's the idea. They see a part of themselves, their effort, their existence, reflected in the good they have done for the other person. It makes their own existence feel more real, more affirmed.
That's a beautiful thought. And then there's a nuanced concept of self-love. Isn't self-love usually seen as bad?
Often, yes. But Aristotle distinguishes between a bad, vicious form of self-love and a good, noble one.
Okay, what's the difference?
The good man is a lover of self, in the noble sense. He gratifies the most authoritative element within himself, reason, and chooses noblest and best actions.
So loving your best self, your rational self.
Exactly. This form of self-love doesn't lead to selfishness. On the contrary, such actions often benefit both himself and his fellows, as he seeks true excellence. He might even sacrifice wealth, honor, or his life for friends or country.
But wouldn't that be self-sacrifice, not self-love?
Aristotle argues it's done for the sake of nobility. a higher form of self-love, pursuing the greatest good for his true self, his rational and virtuous self, which he values more than mere physical existence or possessions.
Ah, okay. So securing the noble for himself is the highest form of self-love.
Right. The wicked man's self-love, on the other hand, leads to greed, indulgence, seeking more than his fair share of external goods, and ultimately harm for both himself and others, because he gratifies the lower, irrational pokes of his soul.
This distinction raises a truly important question for you, listener, to ponder. Are you a good self-lover, striving for your best self, for noble actions, for aligning your life with reason and virtue? Or are you, perhaps unconsciously, a bad self-lover, chasing fleeting, potentially harmful advantages and gratifying your lower appetites?
It's a powerful call to examine your deepest motivations and the object of your own affection, your own self-love.
Finally, on friendship, he addresses a classic philosophical debate. Do the supremely happy individuals, those who have achieved eudaimonia, actually need friends?
Yes, it's a logical question.
Hmm.
If you're perfectly flourishing and self-sufficient, why need anyone else? Some argue they don't.
But Aristotle disagrees.
Strongly.
Yeah.
He contends that man is fundamentally a political creature, a social animal whose nature is to live with others. Therefore, the truly happy man needs friends.
But which kind of friends? We just discussed the three types.
Good point. He clarifies that the supremely happy man doesn't need useful friends, as he already possesses all necessary external goods. Nor does he need pleasure friends much, because his life, being one of virtuous activity, is already inherently pleasant and fulfilling.
So, he needs the third kind, the virtuous friends.
Exactly. He needs virtuous friends for a higher purpose. To do well by them, beneficence, doing good to others, being a hallmark of true virtue, and for companionship and noble activity.
So friends allow him to exercise his virtue more fully.
Yes, and to share in it. Living with good friends, sharing noble endeavors, contemplating truth together, he argues, is unequivocally better than being solitary. It expands and enriches his own virtuous activity. Companionship in virtue is itself a great good.
Okay. But is there a limit? Can you have too many perfect friends?
He thinks so.
Yeah.
There's a practical limit to how many perfect friends one can have. Perhaps the largest number with whom one can live together. You need to share life deeply.
It takes time and energy.
Right. One cannot be a great friend to many, he notes, much like true romantic love, which is often seen as an excess of feeling directed towards one person. Perfect friendship demands time, intimacy, and shared life, which you can't realistically have with a huge number of people.
And he wisely observes the role of friends in both good and bad fortune.
Yes, friendship is more necessary in bad fortune, for help and comfort, but more noble in good fortune, for beneficence and shared joy.
So we need friends for help, but it's even better to have them to share good times and do good things with.
That's the idea. Friends lighten grief by sharing the burden, and amplify pleasure by sharing in its delight. Interestingly, he also points out that manly people, in his cultural context, guard against making their friends grieve, while women and womanly men enjoy sympathizers. Perhaps to an excessive degree, highlighting a cultural observation on the expression of sorrow at the time.
What's truly fascinating here is the depth of Aristotle's understanding of friendship. It's not a superficial concept, but a complex tapestry of relationships with profound implications for our well-being. How do you, in your own life, listener, balance the desire for many connections with the undeniable need for deep, virtuous relationships that truly nourish your soul and foster your flourishing?
It's a question that requires deliberate thought, especially in our increasingly connected, yet sometimes maybe superficially connected, world.
In wrapping up our deep dive into the Nicomachean ethics, it's important we revisit Aristotle's understanding of pleasure, which we touched upon earlier, and then consider what he posits as the absolute highest form of happiness, the contemplative life.
Yes. For many people, throughout history, and certainly today, pleasure is often seen as the ultimate good, the end-all be-all. But Aristotle, as we've seen, has a much more nuanced and, frankly, more interesting view.
He doesn't just dismiss pleasure, does he?
Not at all. He argues that pleasure is most intimately connected with our human nature, and that it plays a crucial role in education and moral development. We learn through pleasure and pain. He strongly refutes arguments that pleasure isn't a good at all.
So what is pleasure for him then, if not the chief good?
For Aristotle, pleasure isn't merely a process or a sensation that leads to something else. Rather, it's the activity of the natural state, an unimpeded activity of a faculty.
Unimpeded activity, like when something is working perfectly.
Exactly. It completes the activity, like the bloom of youth completes a maturing organism. The most complete activity when you're doing something really well, using your faculties perfectly, is, by its very nature, the pleasantest. In other words, when you're doing something exceptionally well, effortlessly, and with full engagement, the pleasure naturally follows. It's a sign of perfection in action.
Okay, let's unpack this further. Pleasure, for Aristotle, isn't just a fleeting sensation or a reward at the end of an activity, but a marker of perfect, unimpeded activity.
Precisely. Think about when you feel most in the flow, whether it's solving a complex problem, deeply engrossed in a creative project, or mastering a new skill.
Yeah, when you lose track of time.
Right. That feeling of seamless engagement where you lose track of time and effort is precisely where your deepest pleasures lie, according to Aristotle. It's a sign that you are operating at your peak, fulfilling your potential in that activity.
Okay, but why aren't we continuously pleased then, if pleasure is so good?
He offers a logical explanation. Humans, he observes, grow weary and are incapable of continuous activity. The mind's activity, like the body's, eventually fatigues and relaxes, and so pleasure dulls or ceases. We just can't maintain that peak state indefinitely.
Makes sense, we get tired.
Furthermore, he acknowledges that different animals and individuals have different proper pleasures corresponding to their unique activities.
Yeah.
The pleasure of a horse is different from the pleasure of a human.
And even among humans, pleasures differ.
Yes, and crucially, what appears pleasant to the good man is thought to be really so.
Ah, so the virtuous person is the standard. Their taste in pleasure is the correct one.
That's the implication. A virtuous person's discernment of pleasure is the standard by which genuine, lasting pleasure should be judged. Disgraceful or fleeting pleasures, he suggests, are merely for perverted taste, not truly reflective of human flourishing or our best nature.
This profound understanding of pleasure then leads him to identify what he believes is the pinnacle of happiness for human beings, the very highest form.
Exactly. The contemplative activity, which is the activity of philosophic wisdom or reason. He calls this the ultimate and complete happiness of man.
Contemplation, just thinking, that's the highest happiness.
It sounds passive, maybe, but he makes a strong case for its superiority. Its preeminence, he argues, lies in its serious worth, aiming at no end beyond itself. Contemplation is done for its own sake, just for the understanding it brings.
Unlike other activities that aim for something else.
Right. It has its own intrinsic pleasure, the pleasure of understanding, which he thinks is the purest. And it is the most self-sufficient activity. The philosopher can contemplate truth, engage in deep thought, even by himself, needing external equipment but little, compared to, say, a general needing an army or a politician needing a city.
So you can do it anywhere, anytime, with minimal resources.
Pretty much. This contrasts sharply with practical virtues like justice or courage, which are exhibited in political or military affairs. These activities are unleisurely because they often involve external constraints, conflicts, and aims beyond themselves, such as achieving peace, gaining power, or earning honors.
So practical life is busy and aims outwards, while contemplation is leisurely and aims inwards at truth itself.
That's a good summary. While the practical virtues are noble and necessary for community life, he argues they are not desirable purely for their own sake, in the same way that contemplation is. Contemplation is the activity of the highest part of us, our reason focused on the highest object's eternal truths.
So while contemplation is considered the highest form of human happiness, it's crucial to understand that Aristotle doesn't suggest we all become reclusive philosophers, right? We still need to live in the world.
Absolutely not. That's a key point. Being human means we're also social creatures with bodies, and we still need external prosperity, things like health, food, shelter, and companionship. And the moral virtues, courage, temperance, justice, etc., to live well in a community.
It's a balance, then.
It is a balance. The contemplative life is supreme, representing our highest rational potential, the divine spark within us. But the practical virtues and external goods are absolutely essential for a complete and flourishing human life lived in community with others. You need both.
This brings us full circle, really, back to the very beginning of our deep dive and that emphasis on action. Aristotle stresses that knowing about virtue isn't enough.
Never enough. We must try to have and use it, or try any other way there may be of becoming good. He is fundamentally practical, always bringing it back to action and character formation.
And he was realistic about how hard that is for most people.
Very realistic. Arguments and lectures, he acknowledges, can certainly encourage the generous-minded youth who have a natural inclination towards what is noble and beautiful. They might inspire those already disposed to virtue.
What?
But, he observes, arguments alone are not sufficient for the many, for the majority of people who do not by nature obey the sense of shame, but only fear of punishment or social consequence. Reason alone doesn't motivate everyone,
That's a rather pessimistic view of human nature, maybe.
or perhaps just realistic based on observation. He notes that it is hard, if not impossible, to remove by argument the traits that have long since been incorporated in the character through repeated action and habit. You can't just talk someone out of deeply ingrained bad habits.
So what's the solution then, if arguments aren't enough?
Habituation and proper nurture, often provided by the legislator or the community through good laws, good education, and good upbringing from a young age. These are absolutely essential for developing virtue.
So the environment, the community, plays a critical role in shaping character.
A critical role. It highlights that living a virtuous life isn't just a matter of individual intellect or good intentions, but of consistent, disciplined action within a supportive, well-ordered community that encourages and fosters virtue.
We've certainly journeyed through Aristotle's profound and, as you said, remarkably practical vision of the good life, from his foundational definition of happiness as virtuous activity.
Through the practical guidance of the golden mean, the complexities of justice and community, and that indispensable role of friendship.
We've seen how he consistently stresses that becoming good isn't a passive state or some theoretical exercise, but an active, ongoing process, a lifelong pursuit of excellence.
And the key takeaway seems clear. For Aristotle, true human flourishing eudaimonia isn't about passive enjoyment, fleeting pleasures, or external accolades like fame or honor.
Instead,
It's about actively cultivating a noble character through deliberate choices, diligently finding the right balance in your passions and impulses that mean, and engaging deeply and virtuously with your community.
it's about becoming the best you can be, which in turn allows you to be the best for others. That link is always there.
Always. Your flourishing contributes to the community's flourishing, and vice versa.
So here's a provocative thought to leave you with, listener, something to chew on after this deep dive. In a world overflowing with instant information, quick fixes, and constant external distractions, Aristotle reminds us that the path to goodness, to genuine, lasting happiness, is often difficult.
It requires profound self-awareness, consistent practice, habituation, and a constant, unwavering aiming for what is noble.
How does this ancient wisdom challenge your modern assumptions about personal growth and pursuit of happiness? Maybe challenge the idea that it should be easy or quick?
And perhaps, thinking practically as Aristotle would want us to, what one noble deed, however small, will you choose to undertake today, knowing that every such action contributes not just to your own flourishing, your own eudaimonia, but ultimately to the collective good of humanity.
Philozoopia.